Henry Irving was one of the most famous actors of the Victorian era who helped legitimize the profession of acting to a level of social respectability it had never previously enjoyed, and in 1895 became the first actor in history to be awarded a knighthood. For nearly 3 decades, he led the Lyceum Theatre in London, producing Shakespearean plays and melodramas with a meticulous attention to stagecraft that set a new standard for the entire industry. And beyond his performances, Irving left a body of written work on the craft that remains a reference for the profession today. Henry Irving was born John Henry Brodribb on February 6, 1838, in a small village in Somerset, England. The only child of Samuel and Mary Brodribb, his father worked as a traveling salesman. When Irving was still young, his parents sent him to live with his aunt in Cornwall, a decision partly due to concern for his health in the damp conditions of city life. He remained there for much of his childhood, attending the city commercial school for 2 years before entering the workforce at age 13 as a clerk at a law firm in London. It was in London where he watched Samuel Phelps perform Hamlet. Inspired by the performance, Irving felt that the stage was where he belonged. He sought out elocution lessons, studied acting privately, and worked to shed the strong Cornish accent he had acquired during his years in Cornwall. He observed Phelps and other leading performers closely, absorbing as much as possible. Irving's stage career began in 1856, when he joined the company of E.D. Davis and performed the role of the Duke of Orleans in Edward Bulwer Lytton's Richelieu, or The Conspiracy. It was on that occasion that he first used the stage name Henry Irving, a name that worked better for the stage than Brodribb. Over the following decade, he sharpened his craft in provincial theatres across England and Scotland, taking on a broad range of roles in comedy and drama and learning the full demands of working on the stage. In 1871, H.L. Bateman, manager of the Lyceum Theatre in London, cast him in a French melodrama adapted into English as The Bells. Irving played a respected burgher haunted by the memory of a murder he committed years earlier, tormented nightly by the sound of the bells from the sleigh of his victim. The performance was an immediate hit. The Bells ran from November 1871 to May of 1872, and Irving performed the role more than any other part throughout his career. It established him as a leading actor in London and demonstrated his particular gift for psychological intensity and the macabre. After Bateman died in 1875, his widow continued to manage the Lyceum, with Irving as its star attraction. In 1878, Irving took over the lease of the theater outright, becoming its sole manager, and entered into a professional partnership with actress Ellen Terry. Terry became his leading lady across an extraordinary range of productions. She was the Ophelia to his Hamlet, the Lady Macbeth to his Macbeth, and Portia to his Shylock. Together they were regarded as the gold standard of Shakespearean performances at the time. In 1874, a production of Hamlet at the Lyceum ran for more than 200 consecutive nights, a feat unheard of for a Shakespearean play, and a clear signal of how Irving was transforming the repartee and the audience for serious theater. Irving would control every element of production, taking personal responsibility for sets, lighting, casting, and directing. Between 1883 and 1904, Irving undertook a series of tours of Britain and North America, bringing his company and productions to wider audiences. He was received with considerable enthusiasm on both sides of the Atlantic. His business manager for the Lyceum and for much of the touring operation was Bram Stoker, who joined Irving's company in 1878 and remained with him for over 27 years. Stoker handled the practical affairs of what was, by that point, a major theatrical enterprise. In 1895, Queen Victoria awarded Irving a knighthood, making him the first actor ever to receive that honor. The gesture was understood by the profession and by the public as a formal acknowledgement that acting had earned its place among the respected arts. Irving also received honorary degrees from the universities of Cambridge, Glasgow, and Dublin. Irving's tenure at the Lyceum ended in 1902 due to a combination of financial pressures and Irving's declining health. He continued to perform on tour in the years that followed, including Thomas A. Becket in Alfred Lord Tennyson's play Becket, a part he had performed in 1893, and that later became one of his most celebrated performances.
Struggling at work? Dealing with bad bosses, confusing office politics, and endless key performance indicators? Time to flip the script. It's time to manage up. Learn to navigate office politics, self-promote, and manage your manager like a pro. Success in the corporate world doesn't come from working harder, it comes from working smarter. Grab your copy of How to Manage Your Manager, all the credit, half the work. Time to take control of your career.
Irving met Florence O'Callaghan in 1866 and married her on July 15, 1869. The marriage was troubled from the beginning. Florence had little patience for the uncertainties of an actor's life, and Irving's dedication to the theater left a little room for domestic routine. The marriage came to an abrupt end on the opening night of The Bells in November of 1871. The story goes that during their carriage ride home, Florence, who was pregnant with their second child, turned to him and asked, "Are you going on making a fool of yourself like this all your life?" Irving said nothing. He stepped out of the carriage at Hyde Park Corner and walked off into the night. And he never saw or spoke to her again. The two never divorced. So when Irving was knighted in 1895, Florence styled herself as Lady Irving. Their two sons, Harry Brodribb Irving, born in 1870, and Lawrence Irving, born in 1871, grew up using the name Brodribb and eventually followed their father into the theater. H.B. Irving became an accomplished actor, manager in his own right, and later a lawyer and writer. Lawrence became a dramatist. Irving was not close to his children when they were young, but grew closer to them as they reached adulthood. Irving was a man of letters as well as a man of stage. He contributed essays and articles on acting and theater throughout his career, and in 1893, he published The Drama Addresses, a collection of lectures he had delivered to academic and public audiences on the nature of the theatrical art. The book was written with the authority of someone who had spent his life on the stage. After his death, Bram Stoker published Personal Reminiscences of Henry Irving, a 2-volume memoir drawn from Stoker's 27 years as Irving's business manager. It remains one of the most detailed first-hand accounts of Irving's working methods and his personal character. Irving also produced a critical edition of Shakespeare's works from a performer's perspective. Irving supervised and contributed to the edition during his lifetime, although some volumes appeared after his death. Henry Irving died on October 13, 1905, in Bradford, Yorkshire, during his farewell tour. He had appeared that evening as Beckett and collapsed on the foyer of the Midland Hotel less than 2 hours after leaving the stage. He was 67 years old. He was cremated and became the first person whose cremated remains were interred at Westminster Abbey. Irving is remembered as the man who brought the theater into the mainstream of Victorian society and who demonstrated, through the force of his own example, that acting was an art worthy of the same respect accorded to literature or music. The knighthood he received was not just a personal honor, it changed the standing of an entire profession.